Welcome to the A to Z of licensed games, a series of vids about games that take something from something else. Now you might be able to tell from the title of this video that I've basically got nothing for this letter. It's wall-to-wall mediocrity. I don't even have a shit room or any honourable mentions. Look, it wasn't for lack of trying, believe me. Some people mentioned the One Piece games as potential candidates, but alas, I could barely find any of them. I did find one, a pretty okay PS2 platformer called One Piece Round the Land, but I couldn't really get with it enough to do a feature. And my original Get Out game was the excellent Osu Tatake Oendan for the Nintendo DS. Not exactly a licensed game, but it does feature some licensed music, so damn it, it counted. Sort of. But it's virtually impossible on emulators, and it's even more impossible when you're hunched over a DS that's lying flat for recording purposes. That's no good. And so this is the doozy, the home one of a subject I've come up with. A topic that I meant to talk about in the letter J when we should have done James Pond, but I forgot to do that then, so it's here now thanks to a handy adjective, and I can plough through it with all the detail you can eat. Right, so, having games that are basically just adverts or ad games is one thing. We've already seen one of those, or at least a game that was intended to be. But actual adverts in games, product placement, isn't something you see too often. At least not back in the day. Product placement is everywhere in games nowadays, just as it is everywhere else. However, you can trace product placement in video games all the way back to the beginning. Here's Datsun 280 Zap from 1976, a special version of Night Driver that was used to promote a car. And the Golden Age had some too. Midway's Almighty Tapper from 1983 quite prominently advertised Budweiser, and another version of the game advertises the Japanese beer Suntory. Sadly, people tend to frown on potentially turning impressionable children into hooch-swilling degenerates, so later versions of the game simply replaced the ads with good old-fashioned generic kiddie-friendly root beer. Now I gotta ask you this. What the fuck are live dancing girls doing in a place that serves root beer on tap? So even though people complain a lot about product placement now, it's not exactly anything new. Now that's not meant to be a justification, it's just the way things are. As per the barcode located inside your white armpit, it is your sole duty to see adverts wherever you go and respond to them. But aside from obvious examples like sports and racing games, product placement used to be quite rare back in the old days. However, it certainly existed, even if you left out any of the obvious ad games. There's too many examples for me to cover everything on every platform, so I'm just going to concentrate on the good old Amiga, which is oddly where I remember most of the placements happening. You'd be playing some plain Jane platform game or the like, and all of a sudden there'd be an ad for a lollipop, or a biscuit, or a bag of crisps. You know, you feel hungry yet? Now I didn't necessarily want to pick up a penguin after playing James Pond 2, but it was very odd to see something from the real world that I could actually buy, touch and gobble down, interfering with my Vija games. It was a strange feeling. To be honest, I felt dirty and ashamed, as if my innocence had just been stripped away from me, and I'd seen games for what they really were, just another filthy salesman clawing at my eyes. Okay, that's just bollocks. If anything, it was kind of amusing. You know, you see penguins and you think, yes, penguins are with you. They like video games too, so I'm with them. Thus concludes Don Draper's Advertising 101 for Dum-Dums. Now let's start digging through the archives, prepping the case studies, whatever. Getting on with the fucking video already. Now obviously the Amiga has plenty of the usual product placement you'd find in sports and racing games. Games like FIFA International Soccer or Lotus Turbo Challenge, not to mention games with real people on the front. Jimmy White's Whirlwind Snooker, Nigel Mansell's World Championship, and of course the almighty Jockey Wilson's Darts Challenge. Sports just stick it right there in the name, don't they? You've also got the other main sporty example, using actual brands of sports kit or whatever. Here, have Ski or Die's Rodney Dangerfield breaking off from his usual litany of one-liners to deliver an earnest, heartfelt pitch for Burton's snowboards. There is however one off-the-wall example from sports that I do know of, Gremlins Premier Manager 3. Now, most football management games usually feature fake companies for sponsors, and this is no exception. But here you can also buy sponsor boards for other Gremlin published games like Lil Divil or Top Gear 2, as well as boards for actual real Amiga magazines. I'm guessing Gremlin struck some sort of deal with Future Publishing, who are responsible for basically all of these mags. Now, coincidentally, Premier Manager 3 was very well received in the press, grabbing mostly 80s and 90s from just about every mag going. But then it is a very good game, if you like that sort of thing. While we're on the subject of management, here's an example from one of the Amiga's very best games, Bullfrog's Theme Park, which was sponsored by the now defunct Midland Bank. It's kinda subtle, but the company's griffin is most certainly there. And I gotta say, this is quite a first for me. A game that's sponsored by a bloody bank, of all things? I don't know about you, but I wasn't thinking very seriously about my overdraft when I was 11. An ISA was the beginning of a shitty Vanilla Ice impression. It was the best of times, worst of times, etc. Of course, these days babies get a current account the second they're yanked from the womb, so, you know, fuck it. But I digress. The ad is hardly intrusive, and in any case, Theme Park is a very special game. Ads don't really matter so much in games when they're paired up with sheer class, you find. Most sponsored Amiga games, however, ignored adult interests like building societies and solicitors, and they tended to strike deals with products that kids would be more familiar with, such as Quavers. This particular brand of cheese-flavoured corn snack starred in not one, but two Amiga games, Pushover and One Step Beyond, both of which are by Ocean Software. Now, if you watched the last vid, then Ocean being at the forefront of this sort of thing probably won't surprise you too much. In short, they're kinda whorish. Anyway, these are both puzzle games. Pushover is a rather average effort where you simply push blocks over and that's it, with the important bit, the advertising, obviously, jammed into the game's intro. One Step Beyond is much more your traditional sort of ad game. You actually play as Colin Curley, Quaver's official big-mouthed canine mascot, and you have to jump on all the platforms in a level. You'll notice there's a bit more in-game advertising here than there is in Pushover. The games are quite similar to each other, and you can even see Colin playing Pushover in One Step Beyond's intro. On the whole though, One Step Beyond is a far better and much more engaging game. I actually quite like it, whereas I'm not a fan of Pushover at all. Jumping's much more fun than pushing blocks, simple as that. Oddly enough, traditional ad games in the 16-bit era are perhaps amongst the least intrusive of the games featured in this vid. To give you an example, I had no idea that Cool Spot was associated with 7-Up until I was an adult. I don't think they really played up the spot over here. That and I never played the game much, or, to be honest, drank the drink. The games that are seemingly just sponsored by a brand or whatever though? Adverts frickin' everywhere, pasted up wall to bloody wall. Gremlin's Zool is perhaps the biggest example of this. A game that was positioned as Amiga's answer to Sonic, a role that the game fills through plenty of colourful settings, a ninja with attitude, and lots of speed, plus a fair bit of advertising in the bargain. The game's first level is one whopping great advertisement for Chupa Chups lollipops. You can't so much as take a few steps in this game without seeing a blooming Chupa Chups sign. The Chupa Boys knew how to pick 'em as well. Zool was one of the Amiga's biggest ever hits, although it really hasn't held up well today. The controls are just so damn awkward, and the game, like a lot of Sonic rip-offs, is too bloody fast. It has Sonic's speed, but no comprehension about what made Sonic's speed actually frickin' work. Plus, having to collect virtually everything you see in the level is really, really frickin' annoying. The partnership between Gremlin and Chupa Chups continued in Zool 2, with lollipops starring in every level. You can go to secret areas and find hundreds of them. Zool 2 is actually a better game than the original, although not by much. The levels are smarter and better designed, but basically it's average at best. Superfrog by Team 17, another Sonic-esque game, also has placements, a Lucozade sponsorship to be precise. Christ, I mean, the way the game deals with Lucozade in the intro makes it pretty close to a flat-out ad game. In the actual game, you regain energy by consuming bottles of the sports drink, while doing the usual rounds of collecting crap and finding the exit. On the whole though, it works out. Superfrog is a much better game than Zool ever was, and the ads aren't even that annoying in-game. I mean, honestly, would you recognise this as a bottle of Lucozade? The tech simply wasn't there yet, friends. And so we come to the last and perhaps the best example of product placement platforming on the Amiga. Oh, geez, say that 3 times in a row. It's James Pond 2 Robocod. This was another big hit on the machine that was ported over to the consoles, and it deserved all the success it got. Hell, James Pond 2 is one of my favourite 16-bit platformers. The levels are big, the collecting isn't irritating, and the controls just work great. Plus it looks lovely, especially when compared to Zool, which frankly looks horribly garish by comparison. Now the sponsorship part comes from Penguin Biscuits, and there's quite a lot of it. A whole level features tons of the little chocolate oblongs, and you actually have to collect penguins in order to exit stages. Plus there's the little ad shoehorned in at the start. So yeah, there's probably about as much here as there is in Zool, enough that one could easily start protesting and screaming about selling out and smashing the state. But in the end it don't really matter all that much, because while the placements may not add anything to the game, Robocod is good enough that it can get away with it. I absolutely loved this game at the time. I was even a member of the James Pond fan club, for a month anyway. Shame I don't have any of that stuff anymore, it was stickers mostly. The only real problem with Robocod is that it's very long and has to be completed in one sitting, which can make the game feel like a bit of a slog after a while, but on the whole it's easily one of the Amiga's best platformers. Now, having seen all these games in action, you might want to ask this question: did any of this product placement actually work? We know it works now, of course. Product placement's everywhere these days, and even serious atmospheric games like Alan Wake take you out of the experience by constantly going on about Verizon phones and Energizer batteries. But did it work in the early 90s, when it was relatively uncommon? Well, I can't find all that much data, I'm no marketing expert or anything, but the answer would appear to be yes, at least if you look at James Pond 2. The cyborg fish was a very big hit, and reports do suggest that Penguin Biscuits experienced an upswing in sales following the game's success. They even outsold the big kingpin of the chocolate biscuit market, the Kit Kat, at least for a while. Interesting, eh? So how should you feel about that? Well, I don't know. I mean, if you really wanted to care, you could say that penguins are made by McVitie's, a thoroughly respectable bunch of Scottish biscuit makers, and Kit Kats are owned by Nestle, a grotesquely evil corporate global behemoth. So, you know, be happy about that. Gaming can make a positive difference in the world. Well, so long as you market chocolate biscuits for a living. And if you do, chances are that you'll tell me that the boss of McVitie's is a total prick, rendering this last paragraph meaningless. Such is life. Go play some games. And with that, it's time to wrap up this special look back at the early days of advertising in games. I hope you had just as much fun as I did. Next time we'll be kicking right back on with business as usual. The letter P thankfully features much more interesting material and loads of potential games I can cover. There might even be some more advertising games and chatter to come. Ain't life grand? But you'll have to wait a few days to find out. Until then, thanks for watching, and wherever you are, whoever you be, have a good one, take care, and I'll see you next time.